Okay guys, so we're going to go on a little bit of an investigative journalism here. This is a location that my good friend Jason Smith, who was kind of my partner in crime for about 5 years when it came to put out the magazine, and unfortunately isn't with us this year. He spotted this out to me recently, and originally I was like, oh yeah Jason, you're spotting towers and seeing things that aren't there. But then when I looked at the company fire profile, I recognised a couple of things. Now just walk with me. Just kind of walking in from the... So we're on Hillside Road right now, and main highway is just basically over there. So the main infrastructure, power, electricity runs across there, and then we'll get one control tower, two control towers, three control towers, and they're all slightly a little bit, especially this one here, is a little bit more configured, sort of more than your standard cell phone organisation. Just a little bit, just not enough as to like, originally thought, Jason was being a little bit paranoid. But that is Johnson Control. Now, that is 396 Hillside Road. It's also, if you look it up, the same control address for Wormald Security. Now, Johnson Control, it turns out, isn't just your everyday ordinary little, what is a Johnson Control? You walk past it, nondescript building, you don't really pay attention, there's no company cars there. Well, Johnson Control, I also want you to have a look a little bit here. There's Automotion, which we don't really know too much about, but we're just walking for a bit of a hub here, and as we're walking across things, I'm going to point things out to you. But see again, Johnson Control, big bloody tower, going directly linking into the Kiwi rail infrastructure. And Johnson Control, or Wormald Security, that's a company that's actually owned by a guy called James Covert. Now James Covert's a very interesting character because he originally used to do electronic mass surveillance for the White House when he worked for the Secret Service under the Ronald Reagan years. And then he decided to come and set up shop in downtown Queenstown at Millbrook. And I always say, and I'm not saying he actually is anything, big deal, but I always say, Wellington is the political capital and Auckland is the financial capital. We might just have to wait a wee bit. If Auckland's the financial capital, then I always think of Queenstown, Arrowtown, around the Millbrook group, the gated community, and now they're kind of like the institutionalised, organised crime capital. And of course, other people you find at Millbrook there, you've got good old David Mace, the top lodge brother of the country, running Ernst and Hong Kong Young, linked in the Food for Oil program. Then you've got Richard V. Allen, the former National Security Advisor and the bagman for the Iran-Contra affair. A long list of bribery, corruption behind good old Richard V. Allen. And then there's James Covert, who likes to let's stick with what we know. Okay, so there's our good old James, and he's got to know a lot of very colourful characters around New Zealand and people that are quite useful. And he runs this hedge fund security, which is for all these big companies with these big US military industrial complex. And again, Johnson Control doesn't just do security; they actually do facial recognition and they even do weapon recognition. So here we've got Tait Communications, Itina, Comlease, Grandstream, Ubiquiti, Ruckus Wi-Fi, Ericsson. All again high-level communications network companies. Again, Itina, all linked in, and again a very interesting paper trail. So we'll follow that up later on. And there's the electricals and Tait Electronics. In case you were remembering, I've talked about them beforehand because they actually do the encrypted technology that's used on the America's Cup yachts, which were kind of like jumping unloaded on these sort of dodgy Antonovs that were flying off to Saudi Arabia. Who was also in the business of supplying various warlords with encrypted communication technology made by companies in New Zealand. By again, all these little firms that have, the startup companies, and when you look into them, they're actually owned by bigger boys, and up and it goes. So basically, I'm saying that Johnson Control isn't just a little small security hub at the backdrop, but actually it's a big. Well, I'm not really sure what it is, but what it's doing, tapping into our main core infrastructure, that's kind of a really interesting question. And it's kind of interesting too, okay, because we had this thing a few years ago about Gigatown, and they had this huge competition, and they made out like, oh, you do this, these hashtags and so on, and they've used it to kind of study how to do algorithms and whatnot. And the idea is that the winners were going to be, get the advanced to get this Gigatown deal which was actually predetermined already, and when it happened, nothing really happened. But the infrastructure had actually, I've shown you photos and film of it actually being put into Dunedin prior to even the gig competition being actually laid out. And generally, what you're looking at is the core infrastructure for an AI-based mass surveillance, which can effectively keep an eye on everybody in real time at any given moment. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that with you because while I'm doing my Ben and Jason's Twin Night Ben's New Zealand 2026 road trip, I thought that was a good one to kind of show something that Jason had brought to attention. And one of the reasons why I really miss my mate, because we made a good team, and he softly spotted things I didn't see, and I feel a little bit worse for wear that my buddy's not around anymore, because he brought a lot to our partnership. But anyway, we keep going, and I said I hope you found that a little bit interesting. And I said I'll look into some of those other companies as well and see where those rabbit holes go. Because again, we've got this whole thing. We've been dragged further and further into this Five Eyes club, which seems very intention to come and use New Zealand as a place for billionaires to build their bunkers, while they turn us into a fully fledged cog of military industrial complex, which really is just sort of continues to drive us further to war at a due cost to the quality of life for everybody on the planet and our civil liberties at boot. While a few get rich, and the good old men keep sending young men to die in old men's wars.